How's it going, everyone? I hope you're all doing well. I know it's been a while since I last posted anything. I have been hard at work on some projects that I've got some videos lined up. But this one here is more of a spur of the moment video because yesterday there was a new blog post and it was talking about some proposed balance changes, okay? And it says they should be coming in the next update. They are proposed. They want some feedback, so I thought what better thing to do than just have a little talk about these proposed changes, see what you guys think, get my point of view not only from a pub format but from an MVM format, from Highlander 6s, and just trying to get your head around all the different weapons and how that's going to affect the different competitive formats and how it's going to affect the pub gameplay that we're going to be seeing in TF2. So this is the blog post. It came out yesterday, June the 20th, and it says here some of the changes coming in the next major update, and that's the big thing for me. Like, you know, I've played this game for near on 10 years now, but it's always nice to have Valve saying, yeah, there's going to be another major update. They are working on something. So this is really good. The fact that there's actually contact and there's actually some sort of feedback from Valve to let us know what they've got in mind is brilliant. And they're asking for our feedback. They want us to get in contact with them. And if there's something that we think is really stupid and really broken, then we can let them know. So it says things here, things to keep in mind. This is not a complete list of changes. So there's going to be more. Obviously, the Pyro update is the next proposed major update, and there's nothing in this list about Pyro at all. Okay, there's nothing about the Pyro. It doesn't even mention it. Okay, it does say some items and classes are still being worked on and not ready for review. So that kind of gives you the idea maybe Pyro is the one that's going to have a massive reworking, not only to its weapons but also to the class itself, and that's what they don't want to reveal just yet. They want to show some of the other stuff. Okay, it says we're going in a little deeper on some classes, and so Scout, there's a lot of changes on Scout. And it says this is work in progress. Some items may be changed prior to release. So this isn't final. This is just their proposed changes. And I suppose if there's a massive backlash from the community over anything specific, they may change it. So we're going to go here. It says here, you know, if you want to contact them, contact us, just send them about something. So we're going to have a look at the things here. We're going to have a look at the things. First off, multi-class. The only multi-class thing they've changed is the panic attack. It says it's one of our least used weapons, and that's obvious. Like, how often do you ever see the panic attack used anywhere? It's never used in sixes. You know, Highlander. I've only ever seen one player use it in Highlander, and that was the engineer on my team, Seal. He pulled off some kind of big plays with the panic attack before.
Be flashed on both Hildreth and on Kunai. Just try and push some of the players back. I mean, for that you get behind, he's behind on third, he's got 50 health.
So easy for Seal to kill. He just killed the combo with the panic attack.
Kakaltu found this
Unbelievable. Too strong. It's just too strong. I really like finally like a decent play from someone.
But it is kind of rare to see it being used. It's more of a situational thing, and it's you know, it really isn't as good as any other shotgun available. I've also, like, we've used it in MVM, not because it's good, but just because it's fun and it's interesting to upgrade.
Protecting! Protect! Everyone! Ah! Oh my god, this actually goes kind of fast.
Okay, second could continue.
That's quicker than Pyros. But, you know, other than that, the weapon is weak. So they're trying to make it more immediately usable. So what they've done, they've added a faster switch speed, more pellets. It's got 30% less damage, and it says it fires a wide fixed shot pattern. So basically that means that it's going to be more like wild buckshot coming out from a shotgun, you know. Which I think is what they intended to do the first time when they actually had the weapon in mind. So it's going to be interesting to see how that actually plays out. And you know, the faster switch speed maybe is probably the best addition. Might make people want to use it. You know, combine that maybe on the Pyro with the Degreaser, which has already got like fast switch speed and stuff like that. You know, but I just think, is it going to be really viable? Like, there's not really a situation where I think, oh, hey, the panic attack would be great in this situation. Maybe in close quarters, in something with a lot of corners. Maybe, you know, I'm thinking underneath, on the last point of upward, you know, just turn around the corner and bam, bam, bam with the panic attack. But I don't know. we'll have to see how that goes. But on to some of the more interesting ones. We're going to talk about the spy. Now, the spy, there's been some huge changes, or some huge proposed changes, I should say. Just to reiterate, these aren't implemented in the game yet. These are just proposed changes from Valve. Everything is subject to change, but this is just the kind of the line that they're going. And actually, just to start off with, it's interesting. They talk about like a situation that's happening, then they say what they want to achieve, and then they say the changes that they're doing to, you know, try and change that. So talk about the ambassador. It says players that are headshot from across the map are expecting to see a spot sniper in their death cam, but they sometimes see, more often than we'd like, a spy with a revolver. So that's the current situation with the ambassador. And I think when you look at the current state of the ambassador in pubs, if you've got a spy with the ambi and the dead ringer, they can just go on absolute massive sprees. And it goes back further, you know, players like Stabby and such, who and Mr. Paladin, big names in the YouTube community for spies, who've, you know, plied their trade in pubs using that ambi dead ringer kind of combo. We're using that aim, have been able to really establish kind of a different play style for spy. And then in the comp community, way back in Europe, you know, Europe has been the so-called gun spy haven, where a lot of spies decide to use the gun spy. And way back when it used to be Solid and Inso, back in the mid-seasons 5 and 6. And more recently, players like Toast, who really just dominated the class and have shown how much can be achieved with the ambassador and how it doesn't have to be this close-range class. So they're trying to change that and make the spy maybe more sneaky. So it says here the goal, they want to reduce the effective combat range to something more reasonable and expected with the spy. And so here we go. First shots are no longer perfectly accurate. Bullet spread is instead reduced by 50%. This makes headshots less reliable at long range while still very viable at close and medium range. So their kind of aim for the spy is instead of having the spy being able to stand really far away and headshot things across the map like a sniper would, it means that if you want to get reliable headshots with the spy and with the ambassador, you're going to have to be at close to medium range, which is what the spy is. The spy is, I guess, intended to be this sneaky class that gets in close range to do damage. And that's how, with the vanilla loadout, you're running the knife, you're running the revolver, you can only really do damage at close range. The ambassador increased the range that spy was effective, and they're trying to counter that now to make it closer. So this is one of the few changes in here that I think are kind of bad. I mean, I see what they're trying to do, and it makes sense. You know, this style of so-called gun spy, where you can do things from a long distance, has been very effective for a lot of spies over the years. But from my point of view, like, there's a better way than adding essentially RNG into the class, because, you know, bullet spread and stuff like that, it's just, it comes down to randomness. So you could still be at a long distance away and aim for the head, and you could get a headshot, but the next time you won't get a headshot, and that's just randomness. And I really don't think in a game where, you know, I play it competitively, Highlander 6s, I don't think random elements should be introduced into the game. That's why, you know, in a competitive game, you don't want that RNG element. You want to have, you know, skill-based weapons. So this is interesting. I understand the way that Valve are trying to go with this. I'm just not sure whether this is the actual way they should. You know, there needs to be a different way. Maybe something else to nerf the ambassador. Maybe less ammo. Maybe a penalty to base damage, a penalty to the health or something like that. Maybe have the ambassador only have 3 shots. You know, that means you're going to have to land those headshots to be effective damage, or maybe have less health. You know, maybe take away 25 health, so you're only 100 HP. So you're susceptible to getting headshot by another ambi spy, or, you know, something like that. But I really don't think adding this random element is the way to go. But moving on, we've got the Dead Ringer now. Feigned Death is an interesting effect, but a good spy can use it extremely frequently, making it frustrating to play against and reducing the risk of using it nearly constantly. Now, there's been a lot of changes to the Dead Ringer. The Dead Ringer has been the bane of many people's lives in TF2 over the years. I remember when it was added into the game, and it was a very interesting mechanic, but over the years, some spies have perfected it. It's been a point of high debate. In TF2L, there was a massive debate about whether the Dead Ringer should be banned. It was initially banned for a competition, and then it was brought back because there was a massive outcry from the community. So many people didn't want it, so many people did want it, and there's never really been a mutual point. So it has been a bone of contention really massively for the community. So rather than making it less interesting, let's make it more predictable to fight against by removing methods by which the spies can reduce its cooldown. So it should create more of a rhythm to fighting against the spy. So the changes ammo kits and dispensers no longer refill the spy's cloak meter. Now this is huge, this is huge. I remember playing, you know, when playing in Highlander, if you're playing against a spy using the Dead Ringer, if you can predict where his cloak spots, his uncloaked spots are going to be, then it's very easy to try and counter him. But if he gets those ammo kits first, or he gets the dispenser first, he's going to rebuild that cloak and he's going to be able to Dead Ringer and get away. And especially with the speed boost, there are very, very few classes who are able to outrun him and get to that ammo pack quicker. So the fact that there's no ammo kits and dispensers no longer refill it, I think that's really, really interesting. It's a massive nerf to it. It's a massive nerf, and it does mean that the speed boost is definitely still needed on the Dead Ringer, and you're going to have to get to a safe space, and you're going to be very susceptible to dying for that period of time. So I think that's a really interesting change. I think it's made the Dead Ringer probably what Valve wanted it to be initially, not this kind of thing that you can tank damage with and continuously Dead Ring, trigger, get away. More something like, okay, you've cloaked, you've got away, now you have to regen that cloak. So it's a really interesting change, I feel. Onto the Your Eternal Reward. It's Alicia's Spy Knife, or technically the reskin, which is the Wanga Prick. But yeah, Eternal Reward, not used very much. I think the only spies I see use it are just kind of using it because it's something else. It's a different playstyle. So they've removed the cannot disguise penalty, which is a big part of the reason why I never used it. You know, just the fact that you couldn't disguise it was just kind of, you had to play a very specific style. It's added non-kill disguises require and consume a full cloak meter. Okay, backstab based disguises are still free. So basically, if you disguise, it uses up your cloak meter. If you backstab someone and turn into that person, you disguise as that person, it doesn't require any cloak. And the cloak drain rate has been increased by 50%. So, not sure, like, again, I've not used the weapon very much, but the fact that you can disguise now probably makes it more readily available for people. But the higher cloak drain rate and stuff like that, I still think compared to the other knives, there's no reason why you'd really use it. But I'd need to have a spy main tell me, or you know, what do you guys think? Do any of you use the Eternal Reward? Let me know if you like this change or not. Onto the scout. There's quite a lot of scouts. We've got the Sandman. I hate the Sandman. It is a weapon that I would like removed from the game. Okay, remove it from the game because I just hate the fact that I can get stunned from across the map for like 8 seconds. It's horrible. So they've changed some stuff. They want to change it so it doesn't end up feeling random rather than skilled. Okay, so changes long-range ball impacts no longer remove the victim's ability to fire their weapon, but the victim is still slowed. So you're able to defend yourself, you're just slowed down. Okay, max range balls now do 50% increased damage. Okay, so now they do more damage at long range, so it's more damaging than inhibiting, I guess. The flight time required to trigger the max effects has been reduced by 20%. Ball regeneration time reduced to 10 seconds from 15. Like, I don't like this. I never liked the Sandman. I don't like the fact that you can disable people essentially from across the map just by whacking a ball into a group of people. In a competitive format, if you do that on a medic and he can't use his Uber, then that was basically tantamount to a death sentence. You're going to drop your Uber. But the fact that you can fire now, I assume will mean that medics can use their Uber. So if they do get stunned, they can still use their Uber. It's not the end of the world. You're just going to get slowed down. So hopefully, you know, the slowing effect is just going to be a slowing effect and not something really, really horrible. But yeah, I mean, I suppose that's good. I just think the regeneration time being reduced means it's going to be more spammable and more damage. It's just, I don't know. It's still kind of random to me. Bonk Atomic Punch. So they've changed it. Now a slow effect to the player after phasing wears off based on the amount of damage they absorbed. Okay? So 25% speed reduction when you've taken a little damage. So once you've taken over 200 or you've absorbed 200 damage, you'll be reduced speed of 65%. So now the atomic punch was something that a lot of scouts used. I remember it was banned after sort of one season in the SEA because it was just considered too powerful in sixes. And in Highlander, some scouts use it just to get behind enemy lines and to distract sentries and stuff like that. But the fact now, you're going to be much, much more aware of when you use the weapon of your escape route. Because if you're still in with the mix and you've absorbed a lot of damage, 65% reduction in your speed is going to be huge. You're not going to be able to escape. You're probably just going to get mulched up. So last 5 seconds, that's 5 seconds of reduced speed. That's more than enough for a team to just absolutely destroy you. So you're going to have to be much more tactical. I'm not sure whether it needed to be nerfed. I don't know. It does say it doesn't require enough skill or carry much of a downside. So that I can understand, but I don't think it was ever that much of a problem. It allows the scout to get to a different area or, you know, attract the attention of someone. But in this day and age, if you realize that there was a scout bonky, you just kind of ignored them. Okay, so they're behind us now. Don't know if it really needed enough, but it's going to be interesting. It does require you to think a lot more, which I suppose is what Valve wants you to do. They want to reduce the kind of weapons that don't require you to actually think. They want you to actually think, do I actually want to use this weapon or not? Now, the Pretty Boys pocket pistol is a weapon that hasn't been used very much by many people, but this update, I think, would make it used a lot. Okay, they want to make the weapon less of a liability and focus it as a get health quick tool with decent burst at the expense of total damage. So the firing speed is up and the HP per hit is up to +7 instead of +5, but it's got minus 25% clip size, so you're down to 9 shots. So if those of you who've got some quick maths, if you land those 9 shots, that is 63 HP. Bam, bam, bam. That is a lot of HP. That is half of your base HP taken back in 9 clips. And with 15% plus firing speed, that means you're going to be able to empty that clip really quickly. So you imagine you're fighting a heavy, and you land all of your hits onto that heavy with the pocket pistol, you're going to get half of your HP back. That can really, really help you in that fight. And it's really interesting the way that the scout is having these weapons like the pocket pistol, and obviously the milk is another thing where you can get your health back, and it helps you in those fights kind of away from, their class is a class that you're not supposed to be getting much heals on. In sixes now, the fact that the medic can heal and go as fast as the scout, it does mean that it does actually get a lot of heals. But you think in Highlander, a scout on the flank with a soldier, the soldier's got the conch and the black box, can get himself health back that way, and now the scout has got things like the milk and the pocket pistol that could get health back that way. So it's really interesting how that's worked. And so I think that's a really, really big buff, and I think you will see a lot of that used. In sixes, it may be something that would consider getting it banned. I mean, I'm not sure. I know a lot of the scouts these days just use the default pistol, or they use the winger for a bit of mobility, but the pocket pistol would be a big upgrade, I feel. The Criticola is a weapon that I think is it's overpowered in the fact that there really wasn't that much of a downside, and it kind of shows that in the fact that in the competitive matchmaking, everywhere you went, you would find teams with 3 or 4 scouts with the Criticola. It's just, the fact that there's no damage drop off on the mini crits from a distance, it just made it really easy to use and really easy to do a lot of damage. So, this was they've talked about the last changes. It doesn't add any risk in the moment. So it talks about how after the effect ended, you got marked for death. But after the effect was, during the effect, you were still very, very lethal. So the goal is to add more decision thought on when and where to activate the Criticola. Okay, so what they've done, each attack while active adds marked for death debuff for 5 seconds. Okay, so that means if you attack under the effect of Criticola, it will add marked for death right then. Before, the Criticola had marked for death. You take mini crits when you're marked for death. That would happen when the effect of the Criticola was over. But now the effect happens as soon as you attack once you've used the Criticola. Which means while you're using the Criticola, you're just as susceptible to dying as you are to putting out damage. I think that's a good change. It's a needed change, because that means now when you're using the Criticola, you have to think, okay, can I do damage without taking damage? Because otherwise I'm just as susceptible to dying, especially as a scout, as I am to actually doing damage. So there's no mark for death when it expires. There's no speed bonus anymore, so you're just going to be the normal speed. It's going to make you easier to hit, and the damage penalty has been taken away, but that has been sort of counteracted by this. So I think that's a really good change. I'd like to see this used, and I don't think many people would use it. I remember back in the early days of Highlander, there were some scouts who would use the criticola to great effect and go on absolute sprees. That was before its previous nerf.
Let's see what he's up to. Oh, the criticola. Yeah, his favorite energy drink. That makes him just kick a lot of ass, so he's going to run around. Oh, he sees the soldier on Kaya, takes him out with a nice 2 shots, and then he is going to run away very low on health.
I do think if this was re-added into Highlander and was made available again, how many scouts would actually use it? It would be more of a suicidal style of play. And I think in things like pubs, you would just be constantly spammed out, and you would very much struggle under these parameters. Onto the atomizer. The atomizer has again been a bone of contention for many people. Banned, unbanned, rebanned in many sixes leagues and stuff like that, and the global whitelist as well. Because the passive effect of the triple jump is considered very, very strong. If you get a scout that's able to jump an extra time, it's very, very difficult to aim and predict. So what they want to do is require the scout to deploy the bat to take advantage of the extra jump, which is a signal to the other players that they can perform an extra jump and reduce the bat's negatives to compensate. So that means now, instead of just running the atomizer and just doing your triple jump anytime you want, you have to get the bat out to actually do the triple jump. Which, you know, like they say, it broadcasts it to the enemy team. Hey, he's got his atomizer out. He might do an extra jump. He might do a triple jump. So then you can kind of predict that, and it means you're not able to actually participate in a fight. You're not able to, you know, get your gun out and shoot while you're doing that triple jump. So it is an interesting change. So no self-inflicted damage though now. There's no attack speed penalty. The added melee attacks done while airborne mini crits. That means if you do a melee attack while you're tripping jumping with the atomizer, it will mini crit. Deploy time penalty 50%. So you can't just quick switch to do the triple jump and quick switch back. So it is slower to switch to. So that's an interesting change, and again, it'd be interesting to see if this is going to be allowed into the sixes scene again. Flying guillotine is something I think is just used by people along with the Sandman. It says weapon is capable of high burst damage under what sometimes seems like random conditions, such as mini crits at long range, full crits when the target is slowed or stunned by anything. Okay, so the goal is to remove the feeling of randomness and reward accuracy. There have been some major moments where players have gone in with the Sandman and thrown the flying guillotine in Highlander and got a medic drop or something huge like that. So what they've done actually now is removed crit versus stun players and removed mini crits at long range. So that's pretty much gone. That's no longer going to be possible. You're no longer going to be able to do the old Sandman and guillotine trick. Instead, what it is long range hits reduce recharge by 1.5 seconds. So yeah, no more crit drops on medics using the flying guillotine. That is gone. That is over. And I don't know, you know, it was kind of annoying to play against, I think, for many players. But I think with this change, it just makes me question whether people are actually ever going to use the guillotine ever again. Moving on to the soldiers, some interesting stuff on the soldier. Now, the base jumper is, of course, the parachute, which allows you to float around. And people complain that it's frustrating to fight against because the target is simply too hard to hit. It is kind of annoying when you're trying to airshot a soldier and then he suddenly deploys a parachute and it changes trajectory by a lot, and you kind of wondering. It makes it easier to hit at that point, but that initial rocket makes you slightly more difficult to hit. So what they've changed, reduced the amount of air control while deployed by 50%, so you're less mobile in the air, but it's going to make it easier to hit, and it's going to have you have less control of you trying to land the parachute. Remove the ability to redeploy the parachute once retracted until the player lands on the ground again. So it was possible before to constantly deploy the parachute, take it away, deploy it again, take it away, keep doing that as many times as you want. Now you can't. Once it's deployed, you have to land on the ground before you can actually use the parachute again. Very interesting change, and it actually makes sense. I mean, how many times do you see people tucking away their parachute in their backpack before getting out again while in midair? You know, it doesn't quite happen. So, an interesting change. But onto one of the major ones for the soldier, I feel, is the man treads. Now, it says the second least used item in the game. The aerial stomp minigame is difficult and the gunboats are superior in most scenarios. It's true, there's no real reason to use the man treads over the gunboats. The gunboats give you that ability to take less explosive damage, so you're able to jump more. And the man treads, the only bonus it really had was less knockback, and landing on people did damage. So, you know, some people use them, but very, very rare. Now the changes, plus 75 push force reduction, now includes air blast. That means if your pyro wants to air blast you out of the way, it's going to have 75% less effect on it. So that's pretty huge, but also 200% air control when blast jumping. You're going to be so mobile in the air, it's going to be insane. So for those of you who like using the rocket jumper and the old meme spoon, the market gardener, you're going to be wanting to use the mantras now, because it is going to be huge. It is going to give you so much more mobility, and it's going to make it very, very interesting for the so-called Trollger loadouts. So very interesting change indeed. Onto the sniper. Now these two are huge, okay? Darwin's Danger Shield, the DDS. If you've ever watched my stream, you know I don't like Darwin's Danger Shields snipers. The DDS made you able to tank a quickscope headshot. Instead of doing 150, it did like, what, 143? So you weren't able to quickscope kill a sniper if he was at full HP with the DDS. And it, like I said, it says here, snipers using this item had an advantage against snipers who weren't. As a result, players felt they were required to equip this item in order to be as competitive. And that's exactly the reason. It's the reason why it was banned in Highlander, because basically the weapon was there as a case of, hey, if the other sniper uses it, I kind of have to use it as well, because otherwise he always has an advantage in the sniper v sniper scenario. Okay, so they want to remove increased survivability against enemy snipers. So the new design, okay, they've taken away the old design. The new design now counter ranged burn attacks, for example flares, and strengthen melee fights versus pyro. So there's afterburn immunity and 50% fire resist. So that means if you get hit by a flare, you're not going to get afterburn, and you're going to be fire resistant up to 50% against the pyro. So that's going to help you in the close range battle. So no bullet resistance, not able to tank headshots anymore. I think this is basically makes it very similar to the Cozy Camper, just more based around fire, in the fact that you're not going to have the afterburn. But it is huge, and I think that's a great change, because the DDS in its previous form was just something for snipers to use if they were bad at sniper and they wanted to be able to tank a headshot before they had a shot against an enemy sniper. So a good change. Moving on to the Razorback though, the goal was to reduce the effectiveness of the pocketed snipers in stalemates and standoffs. This primarily happens in organised competitive play. Now, for those of you who've ever played Highlander, the most powerful class in Highlander arguably is the sniper. Okay, the sniper, he can sit with his combo, he can get healed by the medic, he have the Razorback on, he cannot get backstabbed, he can be fully buffed to 185 HP, he can tank a headshot, he can tank a backstab, and if he's surrounded by the rest of his teammates, he's protected from pretty much everything else. So made it very, very difficult for the sniper to get touched by anything, which is why we've seen the prevalence of spies using the ambassador to even touch the sniper, to get some damage onto him without getting too close and getting killed by his teammates. So what they've done to change it is added 100% overheal penalty. What that effectively means is you cannot get overhealed when you're running the Razorback. That's a really, really interesting change, okay? If you're now a sniper, if you want to run the Razorback and you don't want to get backstabbed, that means you're not going to be able to get buffed. So it's going to basically, if you're playing against a sniper who isn't running the Razorback in a competitive scenario such as Highlander, he is going to be able to be buffed and you're not going to be able to be buffed. That means he is going to have an advantage in the sniper v sniper fight there. Okay, so you're basically having to decide, do you want to be more effective and have the buff and be effective against enemy snipers, or do you want the ability to not get backstabbed? Very, very interesting. The shield regenerates now though after 30 seconds. So, the fact that they've added this massive overheal penalty thing, they've added the fact that the shield now regenerates by itself. So you don't need to go back to the resupply locker. It will just regenerate itself after 30 seconds. But very interesting change, and it does make me wonder if this happens before the new Highlander seasons, whether or not snipers are actually going to use the Razorback. I think they'll start to avoid it just to get that buff from their medics. So very interesting there. Onto the medic now, the Vitasaur. Now, when I started playing Highlander, Season 5 of UGC, that was back in 2011, the Vitasaur was basically the meta. If you were a medic, you had to run the Vitasaur. Your team basically forced you to, because every medic in the game ran it in Highlander, because dying allowed you to preserve up to 20% of your Ubercharge. There's usually about 19% that you would respawn with, and that was huge. 90% rebuilding once you've died was pretty huge, and that was the reason why it was banned, because it was seen, like we said before about some other weapons in Highlander, if a weapon is seen as having to be run by every player, then it's either ruins the game or it's too overpowered. And the Vitasaur was seen as something that messed with the counting of the Ubers, the whole Uber exchange philosophy that is the meta in TF2. The game revolves around medics and their Uber charges, and the fact that you could just respawn with a charge, with a portion of your charge left over, was considered too much. So it was banned in around, I think, Season 7, Season 8. Hasn't been seen ever again. So they want to get it back into it because they're saying Ubercharge on Death is too valuable of an effect to be passive. So maybe they're looking at this to, maybe get it into the competitive scene. So basically you require skill now in order to gain the effect that the Vitasaur previously had, which is a great thing, because I feel, having a weapon that you just get something for free isn't good enough. You want to actually have to be good at the game. You have to actually be good at using the weapon to get a bonus out of it. So basically the change now is that when you hit someone with the Vitasaur, an organ pops out, and then you collect it, and then basically if you die, that preserves 15% of your Uber charge, and the effect caps at 60%. So if you were to charge in and hit 4 people with your Vitasaur, you would basically have 4 organs, and that would mean if you die, you would respawn with 60% of your Uber charge. And this makes it more similar to the Ubersaur. So whereas this collects 15% Uber charge for your respawn, the Ubersaur does 25% active when you hit someone during the game. And it makes me wonder whether this is going to be added, because having it as a passive effect was obviously too strong. But if it requires the medic to go in and get Vitasaur, sorry, then the enemy team can sit there and say, okay, so the medic got 2 Vitasaurs on me, he's going to respawn with 30% Uber, and that could actually enter the calculations in the game. So very interesting concept. Be interesting to see the debate on whether this should be added back into the competitive scene. But onto the Crusader's crossbow. Now I'm a medic main, and I like the crossbow. It adds another level of the skill ceiling to the medic. Aiming your crossbow is not only to do damage, but to heal your teammates in clutch situations, and also build Uber. And building known as arrow building in the game is considered very, very strong, because you can just arrow your teammates and it builds your Uber while you're healing somebody else. So it says here it's very high and significantly out-heals the medigun when the target is in combat. There have been many studies looking at it and seeing how much quicker it actually builds Uber compared to just normally doing it with the medigun. So they want to change things around. Basically now Uber charge gain rate has been reduced in the same way that the medigun's healing, and therefore Uber charge build rate, is. So based on the last time the target was in combat. So the Uber charge gain rate will be reduced by 1/3 when the target has been 1 to 10 seconds outside of combat, and scales up to normal over 10 to 15 seconds. This is known as crit heals on the medigun. So if you've been in a fight and you've just recently been damaged, your healing rate will be at its lowest possible amount. If you haven't been damaged for a long time, then when you get healed by your medic, you have known what's crit heals, and the healing rate of the minigun is absolutely high, and you'll get buffed in no time whatsoever. So this is a really interesting change. It's definitely a nerf to the Crusader's crossbow, and it definitely means you're going to have to think about crit heals when it comes to actually building with the crossbow as well. So I still think Crusader's crossbow building, arrow building, is still going to be a thing if this change is implemented. It just means you're going to have to be much smarter when you're doing it, and studying the crit heals and stuff like that. So interesting change. We'll have to see the actual mechanics of it in place if it actually gets implemented. Onto the heavy. Now all miniguns have been changed. So the 1 second damage and accuracy penalty now applies to the first second of spun up time, whether or not the heavy is firing. Previously, the 1 second damage penalty would only be removed after 1 second of firing. So that basically means now if you spin up as a heavy, you hold your right click and you're spinning up, the accuracy and damage penalty that was 1 second actually disappears after 1 second. It only requires you to be spun up rather than actually firing. Accuracy and damage penalties now reset when the heavy spins down, rather than when the heavy stops firing. This means if you stay spun up beyond 1 second and fire in bursts, damage and accuracy will remain at 100%. So that means as long as you stay spun up as the heavy, your accuracy and damage will never go back down to its base. It will stay at 100%. It's only if you stop spinning down. So that's a really good change as a buff to the heavy, and it actually counteracts a change that they brought in a while ago. And I think it makes more sense. Once you're spun up, your accuracy and your damage should be at its max. They've changed the gloves of running urgently. They've changed it back to how it used to be. So now the gloves of running urgently used to be minus, I think it was minus 6 HP that you used to lose. You used to lose 6 HP per second. They changed it to marked for death. But now they've changed it back. So max health is now drained while the item is active. So to 10 health points per second. And you regenerated while holstered. Health will regenerate only the amount drained while active, minus any damage taken during that time. So that means if you're at 300 HP, you get your gloves out and you run across the map and you lose 50 HP, you put your gloves away, then your HP will go back up to 300. Let's say you do the same exact point, you lose 50 HP from running with the gloves out, but you also take 100 damage from a scout meat shot on the way. You put your gloves away, you're only going to regen that 50 HP, not all of it. You only regen the HP that you lost from the gloves, not from everything from outside sources. Okay? It's removed Mark for Death and removed the 25% damage penalty. And I think this is better because the damage loss from losing HP from the gloves is better than the Marked for Death, because the Marked for Death meant you take mini crits from a long distance. So it's a massive buff to the heavy. It's going to make the Gru much more used, I feel. As it was kind of ignored in recent times for some of the other fists, such as the Eviction Notice, which is, you know, it's got less speed than the Gloves of Running Urgently, but the downside of not being marked for death meant that a lot of heavies decided to use it for that small speed boost. But instead they've changed it. No more damage vulnerability. It is now drained by 5%, and again regenerated while holstered. So it is a slower version of the Gru, but you take less damage during that time as well. So it's going to be interesting to see which version of these the heavy is going to want to use for the speed boost, whether it's the Gru or the Eviction Notice, because essentially they are exactly the same now. They're just different speeds and different amounts of health lost. Also, we've got the Fist of Steel, so the third fist item for the heavy that's been changed. The downside of increased melee damage doesn't really come into play when it counts, e.g. holding a choke point or objective. And when a medic is attached, the resulting pool of effective health is unreasonably large. That basically meant you became a tank. You got the Fist of Steel out and you were being healed. You basically took no damage unless someone was getting in your face with a melee, and that didn't really matter, because in the situations where that was possible, that you weren't really ever going to be meleeed. So what they've changed is they've added 40% overheal reduction while active and 40% healing rate penalty while active. That means while you've got the Fists of Steel out and active and you're taking less damage, you're going to have 40% less overheal and you're going to have 40% less healing rate. So it's going to be less effective in a combo situation when you're being healed. I think that's a good thing. It's a big nerf, but it also means that Fist of Steel is going to be used away from a medic, or it's going to be less effective when you're with the medic. The final change is the jungle update, was just a couple of weeks ago. But on to, was that a couple of weeks ago? No, a few days ago. I don't even know what day it is, 5 days ago. The Engineer. And this is huge for the Engineer, the Rescue Ranger. Ability to repair buildings safely from range without using metal is powerful. Combine this with the ability to instantly teleport buildings from far away, which by itself is interesting and useful enough in many circumstances, you end up with a package that is very strong. The Rescue Ranger was banned in 6v6. It was brought in for one season, and it was banned the next season in the global whitelist, which is used by all of the major top 6's leagues. And I kind of agree with it. I mean, I do think the Rescue Ranger can be countered, but the fact that you can basically be a long distance away to heal your buildings and you can teleport them around made it quite strong. It made it quite strong. And then in Highlander as well, when you combine that with the Wrangler, obviously the Wrangler is banned in 6v6, but in Highlander you got the Wrangler and Rescue Ranger combo. It means that you can wrangle your sentry from a distance, you can heal your sentry from a distance. It becomes this extremely powerful package altogether. So what they've changed is now ranged repairs now consume metal at a 4-to-1 health to metal ratio. For example, repairing 60 damage costs 50 metal. So that actually adds something you have to think about. You can't just spam rescue ranger bolts and heal stuff. Repairing actually costs metal now, just as it would using the wrench. So big change, big change. A small nerf to the rescue ranger. I still think it's going to be very powerful, and I still think it's probably not going to be used in going to be allowed again in 6v6, but it's moving towards the right direction. Valve seems to understand that this combination of being able to teleport and heal from a distance is quite strong. So they've decided to give it a little nerf. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But that's all of the stuff. And like we said at the top, guys, we go back to the top. Valve have said this is not the complete list of changes. There's going to be other items and classes still working on for us to find out about. Okay. So if you want to give feedback, like say something in the comments. Are there any of these that you agree with? Any of them that you vehemently disagree with? You absolutely hate them. They shouldn't be changed. Say in the comments. Or better yet, contact Valve. Send a message to Valve. Let them know and say, hey, I really dislike this change and this is the reason why I don't like it. And that's the kind of feedback they need. It's the kind of feedback they want. It says, hearing from you helps us prioritize our work and influences the direction the game moves in. With our feedback, we can help move TF2 in a direction that everyone's going to enjoy, into a direction that hopefully can make the game better, and hopefully improve and make a wider whitelist in the competitive scenes. But I hope you liked the video, guys. Please let me know what you thought about the weapons, about the video. Just let me know, and I'll see you guys next time.